Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's show with SportsbookReview.com. I'm your host, Lee Martin, here to talk UFC with my two favorite men. We have SBR's UFC expert, David Manyun, and MMA Mania's lead host, Matt Ryan. We're going to break down the entire main card for UFC Fight Night, Brunson versus Shahbazyan. I love that last name. But before we get into any UFC talk, like always, go ahead, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show. Now, let's get to it. First off, I just need to point out, Dave, we missed you last week. So I'm just going to start off and ask you how your week went with Whittaker versus Till.
It was great. I loved the cards. Bets were flying in. It was a lovely night, and then Darren Till lost. So, no, it wasn't good for me because as a bettor, yeah, that's fine. It was great. I mean, I'm used to winning, used to losing, so that don't make much difference. Yeah. But when it comes to fighters that I like and follow, yeah, it did hurt a little bit. I can admit that. But we move on, and we're on to a new card, and there's no English fighters this week, so yeah, no personal feelings involved.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a better week this weekend. And how are you today, Matt? Did you have a wonderful week last week with your Whittaker until that? Hopefully we're going to have a better week.
I'm hoping for a better week. As everybody knows, I was way wrong on Darren Till. Swing on and a miss on that one. Much like my New York Mets, started out strong and then completely collapsed in the towards the back stretch. But it is a new week, and there was a bright side to Whittaker versus Till. I actually got to see some friends have a socially distanced barbecue and eat some ribs. So, you know, you win some, you lose some. There was ribs, so I really can't be that mad.
Ribs are always a plus. Now let's just get into the Brunson versus Shahbazyan fight. Let's start off with the first fight of the main card. We're going to start off with the middleweight Holland versus Trevin Giles. Via Bet Online, their odds. Holland minus 205 and Giles plus 175. Dave, we're going to start with you since we missed you last week. Can you give us your breakdown and pick for that fight?
Sure. This is an interesting fight, I must say. Middleweight bout between two prospects, I'd say. More so Trevin Giles. He had hype behind him coming into the UFC. He's got some strong hands. Strong wrestling as well, because he's got a former background in college football, so you know he's got that core strength. And yeah, he's now not the prospect he once was, unfortunately, because he came off two back-to-back submission losses against not so good competition in Zach Cummins and Gerald Mershaw, the other one. Yeah, he's a former cage combat middleweight champion. Take that as you will. It's not one of the greatest MMA promotions, but it's also not one of the worst. And look, for me, Trevin Giles just hasn't lived up to his expectation, really. And now he's going to try and get back on track with a late replacement fighter in Holland, which, damn, that's just tough from the get-go for me, because Holland he's a big boy for this division now. Both of these guys are riding a similar career trajectory, sort of. And I'll tell you what is interesting, they're both from different areas of Texas, so this is a battle of Texas, this one. But with this 9-day notice and Holland stepping up to the plate, Trevin Giles is not going to have been able to game plan too much for the unpredictable Holland. He can finish this on the feet, he can finish this on the floor. He's going to be the longer guy, he's going to be the more natural middleweight, whereas I could see Trevin Giles being more successful in welterweight. But what do I know about his weight cut and his fitness regime? End of the day, for me, it's got to be Holland. I think this one might go to decision. I think Trevin Giles, I don't think Holland's going to be throwing up too many submissions. I think Trevin Giles is going to be very cautious after them back-to-back chokes that he had. So for me, I'm going to take Holland, and most likely I'll have a little something on Holland by decision, because the odds are close to 3-1. I think it's plus 255 at Bet Online for Holland by decision. So yeah, first pick of the night for me would be Holland.
All right, awesome. How about you, Matt? Do you agree with Dave, or do you have your own take on that fight?
While I do agree that Kevin Holland is probably going to win this fight, I've got a few other things that I'm looking at. First, you're looking at common opponents. Both of these guys have faced off against Gerald Meerschaert, and Giles got the loss. He was tapped out by Meerschaert, while Holland went the distance and was able to beat him. So if you're looking at strength of schedule and common competition for all of our college sports fans out there, if you're looking at a level set for each fighter, if Holland was able to get past Meerschaert, that gives him a bit of an edge to me. And also, we're back at the apex, which means a smaller cage. And when you look at the records of both fighters, Kevin Holland stands out because he's had 8 wins by knockout. And if you're Giles, who's afraid of getting choked out for a third straight time, less room to work with, you're going to have a more aggressive Giles, and that might open him up to possibly getting pieced up by Holland or even tapped out again. Both of it, as we said, both of his career losses came by way of submission. We've got that smaller cage. And Holland, he's on 9 days' notice, but he has fought in the past few months, so he still could be in competition shape. He was fighting Anthony Hernandez back in the Jacksonville swing of the current.
Sorry, just to add to that, I can confirm he is in shape because he's been demanding a fight since that Anthony Hernandez. So he's wanted to be back in there. Sorry, carry on.
Yes, how dare you help me with my insight? But for me, it's Holland. I don't think this goes to the scorecards. There's going to be a barn door is going to be open, whether it's a submission or a knockout. Holland's going to have the momentum here. I think Giles is going to try to be over aggressive, especially because he's got nowhere to hide. He's not going to be able to try to find distance. So this completely turns the fight on its head. And for me, it's going to be Holland by some sort of stoppage.
All right. Well, if you guys do want to get in on that fight, again, via Bet Online, Holland is -205 and Giles is +175. Now let's move on to the next fight. We have lightweight Lando Vannata and Bobby Green. Via Bet Online, Vannata is -150 and Green is +130. Matt, I'm going to continue with you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight?
All right. Well, let's take a look at Vannata first, who's got a weird stat line in his last 6 fights. He's gone 2-2-2. He's had 2 draws. His last fight was back in February where he was able to pull off a decision over Yancy Mineros. But he had a draw against Bobby Green. That's where one of those 2 draws came up back at UFC 216. And an illegal knee cost Vannata the fight. It cost him 1 point on the scorecards, which set up for that draw. And if you look at Green, he's gone 2-3-1. So both of these guys walking into a main card fight with 500 or sub 500 records. And while Green's coming in with the momentum, he was able to beat UFC Hall of Famer Clay Guida in his last fight back in May. Green was coming off with 2 losses before that to Francisco Trinaldo, who we saw last week, and Drakkar Klose. But when you look at the competition both fighters have faced, Bobby Green's fought against Dustin Poirier and Edson Barbosa. While he was able to go against the distance against Barbosa, he got knocked out by Poirier. For me, I think it's going to be Vannata, just looking at the way their last few fights have broken out, and it would be a +500 record for Vannata if he didn't land that illegal knee. I think we're going to get a smarter, more cautious Vannata in this fight. So watch this one go to the scorecards, and Vannata's going to take the win.
All right, Dave, on over to you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight? I'm just going to give you the odds. Again, we have Vannata -150 and Green +130. Dave.
Yeah, groovy Lando Vannata. I'll never forget him. For one, he has probably the coolest name in the UFC. And for 2, he rocks Tony Ferguson. And at one point, I thought he was going to finish Tony Ferguson and shock the world. Now, watching these 2 with obviously the best way to watch their first fight. They've already had a fight. So capping becomes easy, I say. And if it wasn't for, as Matt Wrench, if it wasn't for that illegal knee, which wasn't an illegal knee because it didn't connect, it was on the inside of his thigh. Ref got it wrong, in my opinion. Bobby Green was not rocked at all. He played up to it. And that point was taken. And that point taken was the reason why Lando why Lando drew that fight. He would have had his hand raised. Split decision, in my opinion. There's been some time since this fight. Both guys have been active, but we have to know, look, Bobby Green, I'm not sure how serious this guy is. How long ago was it he was screaming on Twitter that he has a new job and it pays more than the UFC? year later, he's back in the UFC and he's fighting again. Now, what can we take from the Clay Guida fight? I can take a lot from that. Do you know what I can take? He couldn't get Clay Guida outside of that cage within 15 minutes. If you're going to bring anything significant to a fight and you can't get Clay Guida out there, I don't see you doing much to the chin of Vannata the second time around. We've got the younger guy in Vannata who is going to have learned more. If anybody is going to bring some new tools to the table, it's going to be Lando Vannata. Bobby Green's a tough guy, and he's fought the who's who in the UFC. He really has, but he's never really shown me anything. The fight is risky. The odds are close for a reason. If we looking at the first fight, at periods of that fight, it's just like watching two really talented drunk martial artists. No regard for each other's punch whatsoever. Just taking them. Bobby Green's style of striking as well is so unorthodox. I cannot even explain the way he boxes. It's so, yeah, it is hard to read, and that's why he does connect with his punches. But at the same time, he takes a lot to give a lot. And for me, I've got to side with Vannata. I really do. Just the first fight, he won the first fight. Okay, it was a close fight. He had a point taken off him, but he won the first fight. Here we are. He's got more experience on his belt. He's the younger fighter, and I think he's more serious about this career than Bobby Green is. So yeah, for me, it's going to be Lando Vannata, probably decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got Bobby Green out of there either. I wouldn't be surprised if he could put him out. But yeah, groovy Lando Vannata for me.
All right. So if you guys do want to get in on that fight, again, via Bet Online, Vannata's minus 150 and Green is plus 130. Now let's move on to the next fight. We have welterweight Vincente Luque versus the rude boy Randy Brown. Via Bet Online, we have Luque minus 183 and Brown plus 158. Dave, I'm going to continue with you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight?
Yes, man. Randy Brown. God, I jumped on this. I don't usually put in the parlays early, but I jumped on a parlay early with Vincente Luque in it. Look, I do see Randy Brown. He does have tools. He does have tools to get people out there, and he's a skillful fighter. What I do like about Randy Brown is his calmness and the relaxed approach that he's been bringing to his fights, especially that win over Warley Alves, which is his most significant win. Over a guy that beat Colby Covington. So, yeah, the triangle off his back, throwing them elbows at Alves, just vicious. Alves had no choice but to tap. He was in a triangle whilst getting elbowed in the top of his head. Like, damn, not a position you want to be in. But we can flip reverse that, you see. And then we go look at the Nico Price fight. And if anybody's chinny, then it's somebody that can get knocked out whilst they are towering over the person that knocks them out. Getting knocked out from Nico, who was in bottom guard, was just something that fans will never forget. It will be a highlight reel that will be replayed in 10, 20 years' time because you just don't see it happen. Is that something for Nico Price's power? Yeah, a little bit, but we've also saw Nico Price stand on the feet, swinging his entire life into his punches, and guys like Vincente Luque just eating them up. So maybe it's more to do with Randy Brown's chin, because damn, don't see many people getting knocked out like that now. This fight, for me, I think it's going to be a dominant one for Vincente. I really don't see Randy Brown competing at Vincente's level. What he needs to do is obviously he's got the reach advantage. He needs to keep his distance, stay at range, and strike his way probably to a decision maybe. But even trying to think of a game plan for Randy, I just don't know, because Vincente is so tough. Vincente, I think he's 13th ranked now. Fighting out of Hard Knocks, that says it all. It's Team Usman, Squad Usman. He's got 6 more years experience at the pro level than Randy Brown as well. And the question we have to ask is where isn't Luque good? All I can really find is his striking defense, but that's when he's getting into them wars with guys like Nico Price and Brian Barberena. I think he just lets it slip and just has such a good chin that he doesn't mind taking a shot or two. In that fight versus Nico Price, them calf kicks, I think they can be significant against a guy like Randy Brown, who might try to utilize his reach, and if he does, them shredding calf kicks that took out Nico's legs in Vincente's last fight can definitely work against Randy Brown. And just everything about Vincente, like there was at the end of that fight with Luque, the left hook, like a down cut, not an uppercut, a down cut. Like his hook comes from such a weird angle. I mean, I really can't praise Vincente Luque enough. And yes, I know he's took some serious damage, and I see people questioning his durability, and I'm trying to think why. And yeah, I understand he's been through the wars, but he's still here, and he hasn't really shown signs of decline. So yeah, for me, it's got to be Vincente. I think he can get it finished any way he wants, on the ground, standing, or he could take a decision. But for Randy Brown, I don't think it's going to be a good night for him against the Brazilian and Vincente Luque.
All right, Matt, can you give me your take on that fight for Vincente Luque versus Randy Brown?
Well, I could be bombastic and take the entire contrarian take of what Dave has just said, but to quote Aaron Hansen, you got to look at the resume of Vincente Luque. 5-1 in his last 6 fights. Beat Mike Perry, by the way. Mike Perry, who has taken the world and the elderly by storm in 2020. The expecting father, who is now on the he's a literal death panel. His biggest loss was to Leon Edwards. Now I just want some 2-piece and a biscuit, but that's just me. When you look at Randy Brown, and you talked about the common opponent in Nico Price dropped Randy Brown from bottom, and Vincente Luque caused a doctor stoppage. So you see 2 completely different results there for Luque and Brown. And also, Randy Brown lost to Bilal Muhammad, another common opponent between the 2 of them. He's not fought since November of last year, did Brown. And while he's won half of his fights by knockout, that might improve in a smaller cage. You talk about strike defense. You got to think about the fact that if Luque wants to go to war inside a smaller cage, he won't be able to peel back as easily. There's not a lot of distance. I hate to reiterate things, but in fights like this, the smaller cage continues to play a factor. Size does matter, ladies and gentlemen. Don't believe your girlfriend. Size does matter, especially inside the octagon. And when these fights go deeper into, if this goes into the 2nd or the 3rd round and Luque keeps getting pieced up in those exchanges, Brown may be able to pull off the upset here, but the way things track, the way things are going, the way this fight is constructed, Luque will be able to pull off the victory. I just don't know if it'll come inside the distance.
All right. Well, if you guys want to get in on that fight again via BetOnline, Vincente Luque is -183 and Randy Brown is +158. Let's move on to the next fight. We have women's flyweight. Joanne Calderwood versus Jennifer Maia via BetOnline. Calderwood's -150 and Maia's +130. Matt, I'm going to continue with you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight?
I don't mean to quote somebody else here, but to quote Dusty Rhodes, this is risky business for Joanne Calderwood. Had a title shot all but lined up, but she decided to take this fight against Jennifer Maia, who lost to a common opponent in Caitlin Chookagian. So did Calderwood. Calderwood is 3-3 in her last 6 with losses to Chookagian and Cynthia Calvillo by decision and a submission loss to Jessica Andrade. Her last fight was at UFC 242, where she was able to beat Angela Lee, and most of her wins are by way of decision. So this fight here is going to be about endurance for Calderwood and just basically trying to set herself up in a showcase to prove that she deserves a title shot. Before we went on the air, me and Dave were talking about whether or not Calderwood deserved to have a title shot, and Dave will be able to break that down in more succinct terms than my bloviating ass. But when you look at Maia, we have the common opponent in Chookagian, 4-2 in her last 6, so Maia on a decent upswing, losses to Chookagian and Liz Carmouche, but has 2 wins over Roxy Modafferi, who is not a pushover in any way, shape, or form. But we're in a pandemic. And even before the pandemic, Maia missed weight in her last 2 fights. They were forced to be catch-weight fights. So conditioning and health is going to be a key here. We don't know if it was injury. We don't know if it's in her inability to make that weight. But That's going to play a huge factor into it. And tomorrow, I feel like everybody in the UFC matchmaking staff are going to have their fingernails as nubs, hoping and praying that their co-main event does not become a catchweight fight, especially since this is the last fight before the next pay-per-view. We've got a week off next week, I do believe. It's hard to keep up with fight cards now. They just kind of materialize out of nowhere. But for me, Calderwood has the most to lose. She's going to be more aggressive in this fight, and she needs to prove herself. Even though she was guaranteed a title fight, she needs to prove herself here, and I think she gets to win, but it's going to be an interesting 15 minutes to decision.
No, definitely. Now, Dave, I'm going to go over to you. I'm going to read you those odds again. We have Calderwood minus 150 and Maia plus 130. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight, and also give me your take on those odds?
I mean, look, Calderwood's taking a fight on 12 days' notice when she was already in line for the title shot against Shevchenko. She's currently third ranked. First and second, they've already had their shots at Shevchenko. They've lost. Calderwood's up next. Oh, I know. I'll accept this fight and take on a strong, powerful girl in Jennifer Maia, who's currently, I think she's 8th or 9th ranked right now, and potentially risk losing that title shot that I was going to get. It is confusing. But maybe JoJo sees something that we don't. And, you know, that's the information that we're not going to know about. Maybe she's looking at Jennifer Maia thinking, I will eat this girl alive. Jennifer Maia has missed weight twice now. If that's not a sign that you're in the wrong division, then I don't know what is. Maybe she doesn't want to fight the bigger girl. She'll be too small in height, or she just can't cut to a lower division. But either way, it's not a good sign. So there's a risk straight away there in backing Jennifer Maia, because if you're struggling to cut weight, you're more than likely going to struggle to fight for 15 minutes and feel good about it. I think she's going to fade. I think this will be JoJo's kicks that can dictate this fight. JoJo is a former Muay Thai champion, multiple organizations. She went 19-2 in Muay Thai before she even started mixed martial arts. So she knows how to strike, and we can see that when we look at her past fights. I just need to do a little quick check. Sorry, who did she lose to? JoJo. She lost to Caitlin. That was it. Sorry.
Yeah, Chukagian, Calvillo, and Andrade.
That fight in particular, she lost that fight because of her output. She was too relaxed, too calm, and she was not throwing the output that she usually would. And her coaches, or maybe even herself or her husband, made that apparent, and we saw that in the Andrea Lee fight. Now, it was a split decision, but the output of JoJo is what gave her that decision. She landed a ridiculous amount of leg kicks because that's where she's good at. Take it back to her bread and butter. We've been watching Joanne. We've been watching her grapple a lot lately, which is great because I think her grappling game has evolved tenfold since she first started. And you need that grappling, and she's going to need that grappling against the black belt in Jennifer Maia, because although we haven't saw Jennifer Maia tap anyone yet, you go back at her record and watch her old fights. That was what gave her the name she has today. It's what got her in the UFC. She was tapping girls left, right, and center. I haven't done any research on a black belt, and I'm not sure who handed her that black belt, but you know, it's there, and there's that risk. I think if Maia's going to win this fight, it would have to be by submission, because I don't see her winning the striking battle with JoJo, strictly based on speed. JoJo's going to have the speed, not only to get out of there away from Jennifer's strokes, but also to get in and land her high output. Jennifer's also a former, I think she was a former boxer, she was a shoot boxer. So she can box, and she's got power. She's got a beautiful overhand into a hook, which is an odd combination to throw, but she lands the power punch first and then follows up with another power in the hook. And she's definitely got pop in them punches. I just think JoJo's going to be too fast for her. Cliche female women's MMA fight, we'll see it go to the distance. JoJo will have her hand raised, probably unanimous just based on the output. But if Jenna can, you know, implement a bit of that grappling into it, I'm not sure who's going to win that. Although, look, as I mentioned with Calderwood, her grappling has really improved. So I think JoJo's going to be able to keep this on the feet and outpoint Jennifer Maia to a unanimous decision. There's my prediction for you guys.
All right, Calderwood it is. So via Bet Online, if you do want to get in on that fight again, Calderwood is -150 and Maia is +130. Now we get to the main event. We have middleweight Derrick Brunson versus Edmond Shabazzian. Bet Online, Shahbazyan is -315 and Brunson is +265. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for the main event?
All right. So we go back to our friend, the smaller cage. This one will be a pinata fight because someone's going to get busted open. Some raspberry jam's going to fall out, and someone's probably going to the hospital on Saturday night. When we look at Edmond Shabazzian, he's undefeated, has won by stoppage in all of his UFC fights. All but 2 of his pro fights have come by way of knockout. So when you put someone like that in the biggest fight of their career in their first main event, it's basically Christmas morning for Edmond Shabazzian going up against Derrick Brunson, who's 4-2 in his last 6, with the losses coming to Anderson Silva. Sorry, my Brooklyn came out. And Robert Whittaker prior to this current run. The losses in these last 6 were to Israel Adesanya and Jacare Souza. So in those 4 losses, he's fought against former champions and Hall of Fame quality fighters in that lot. And also, Brunson was able to beat Lyoto Machida. And Brunson's knockout percentage, 11 of his 20 wins have come by way of knockout. So this one will not go to the finish. The UFC is in desperate need of new stars at every division. Shahbazyan's been a guy he's carrying the show. His branding is carrying the show. Hopefully this does not turn into a Francis Ngannou situation where it's too much too soon for a young contender. I would like to take Brunson here, but I do believe that there are a lot of things that open up for Shahbazyan to win this fight. It comes down to the smaller cage. It comes down to all the pressures on him, so Shahbazyan's going to have to perform. If he leaves a huge opening, this fight ends quick. But I think Shahbazyan will be able to close the distance. He's going to have to finish it in the first 3 rounds. The deeper this fight goes, the better it is for Brunson. So if you're looking to get a good bet here, in my opinion, don't come after me if I'm wrong. You don't know where I live. I would take Shahbazyan by stoppage.
All right. How about you, Dave? Do you agree, or what's your take? Again, I'm going to read you those odds. It's Shahbazyan -315 and Brunson +265. Dave?
Yeah, see, the odds are the problem. I do agree. I agree completely. I'm not going to be that guy this week who is trying to give it Billy Big Balls by picking Derrick Brunson. And no, it's not the time for me. I don't think, not against Shahbazyan. We spoke about this before we went live, and I just don't. I don't have enough from him yet. But I also, he's also gave me a knockout over Brad Tavares in the first round, which is more than enough to make me just, continue watching his career and see how it goes before I get fully invested into him. But I think this is his fight to lose, really. I also forgot that we're back in the smaller cage. So now I'm racking my brain over all these fights that I've been breaking down with the Fight Island size cage, because we're back in America at the Apex with the small cage. And now I'm thinking, damn, there's a few people that could have some problems with that.
It's like switching back to metric.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think Brunson's wrestling, the smaller cage, could really help his wrestling, man. Look, he's a heavy-hitting middleweight, Brunson, and he has fought some real tough guys, but when he fights the real tough guys, he gets really knocked out. Mm-hmm. So, and now he's fighting a 22-year-old who is Ronda Rousey's little hype, managed by Ronda, used to train with Ronda, right. And it's just like, I don't want to fall for some Ronda and Edmund prodigy, yeah, but he looks so good, and knocking out Brad Tavares in that fashion was real impressive. 22 years old. He is like what we wanted from Sage Northcutt. We've actually got it. I just hope he can keep it up in this one. Now, Brunson should focus on his wrestling, right, and use that fight IQ. You have been in this situation countless times. But Brunson just doesn't use that. He doesn't. He's made a more calm approach to his fights recently. We used to watch Brunson come out, go wild, either get knocked out or knock the opponent out. In his previous 2 fights against Elias Theodoro and Ian Heinisch, we had a calm Brunson just come out and just casually take a unanimous decision. And it wasn't the Brunson that we knew and loved. And I think that Brunson might be the only Brunson that's going to be able to beat Shahbazyan this weekend. It's hard to compile the strategy for Edmund when his skill set can literally dictate the pace of the fight from any area in martial arts. We've seen him be good on the ground, standing, wherever this fight takes place. He's undefeated right now and he's knocking out big names. So will he put Brunson on that list? I think so. The straight 1-2 jab down the center put Brad Tavares in a daze before that eventual technical knockout took place. And with the age of Brunson and just the damage is taking over his career right now, this is a tough test, very tough test for Derrick, and a great position for both fighters. This is going to put Shahbazyan as the next big thing, and nobody will be talking about the Russian anymore. Or Derrick Brunson's going to put out a prospect and get himself up in the rankings a little bit. Not so much up in the rankings, but maybe a better fight, bigger fight. The odds are the problem for me. I want to back Edmond. I really do. I really do want to back him left, right, and center. Put him on all my parlays. And yeah, but I just can't. I need to watch him dominate Derrick Brunson, and I'll jump on that train with everyone else when he fights next.
All right. Well, I'm sure you take Edmund over Derrick.
Clarify. Sorry, that was a bit confusing. I am on Edmund.
Yeah,
but I'm probably not going to bet him. I haven't decided to place an actual bet on him as yet. I think the odds are a bit risky, but at the same time, they could be very well justified when he knocks Derrick Brunson out in 10 seconds. I don't know. And that's for that reason, that's why I'm off this fight. Yeah. Don't like the opening line. I probably won't like the closing line. I don't like the line now. So yeah, no bet, but Edmund most likely by KO, TKO.
Yeah, so there you have it. Edmund on both sides. And again, if you do want to get in on it via BetOnline, Shahbazyan is -315 and Brunson is +265. Well, that's all I have for the main card breakdown. Thank you guys so much for dropping your knowledge and just giving me your time. If you want to stay updated with the guys' picks and just everything that they do, MMA and UFC related, definitely give them a follow on Twitter. You can follow Dave at @DManion_, and you can follow Matt at MRyan Consulting. And also, if you're not following SBR on Twitter and Instagram, definitely give us a follow at SBR Sportsbigs. And also, like always, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show with us. Again, thank you guys so much for your time. Until next time.